under the Reagan administration, during which I had access to all of the most important documents for the restructuring of not only American education but global education. And I'm also the author of The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, which gets into all of this, gives the background of what I saw not only in the Department of Education but as a local school board member. I was trained to identify the resistors too, the sex ed, drug ed, alcohol ed, suicide ed, death ed, those good smart Americans who realize that anything that has education hanging off the end of it is probably not what they're looking for. I was trained to identify those good people and to go up against them, and actually to go and try to get them to join us through the group process system, make them feel important, get them on a committee. And when that just blew my mind. I have to say, people often ask me, what is it that got you involved in education? Well, finding out what I saw at the local level certainly upset me, because we're being trained to identify resistors. You know, then I got pretty upset. And luckily, there was a big book that came with the in-service training called Innovations in Education, A Change Agent's Guide. And I was able to take that back home with me. Unbelievable examples of how to con the Christians and different people who are upset with what you're trying to do, how to bring them over to your side, case studies, true case studies of educators who had put programs in that normally, you know, in a normal American town, nobody would want them. How did they manage to get them in? How did they con the people? And the other thing was, not only was I trained to identify the resistors, I was trained to go to the important people, high profile, highly thought of people in the community, with the Rotary, and Chamber of Commerce, Garden Club, you name it, the different groups in our towns. Go to them and convince them of the importance of these new programs like sex ed, drug ed, I just mentioned all of them, and to get them on your side, because when you can get the leadership in a community to go along with it, then the newspaper comes in and says, you know, a committee's been set up with the head of the Rotary and this. Then the newspaper comes in and says, you know, a committee's been set up with the head of the Rotary and this. Then the newspaper comes in and says, you know, a committee's been set up with the head of the Rotary and this and that, and they're all getting behind this task force to discuss whether we're going to have a new sex education program. And then when Mary Jones, you know, who ordinarily would think, why would we want to have a sex education program when we don't have any problems with kids having sex or anything? So she might be, you know, concerned. She might be one of the resistors. She reads that her best friend, who's the head of the Garden Club, is on this committee, and she thinks, oh, well, hey, Mary Appleton is on that committee. She's heading it up. It must be okay. So I was taught really how to con the community. Edward
Bernays, the nephew of world-famous psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud, would study group dynamics and become the father of public relations. He authored the book Propaganda in 1928. In it, he described how to intelligently and consciously manipulate the habits and opinions of the masses within a democratic society. He went on to state that those who harness this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government and are the true ruling power. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world.
The average American is distracted, mindless, worried about minuscule things, celebrities, as if it was their own family members. And this is by design, because the powers that be, who own the media, know how our brains work. They know scientifically how the human mind functions. They know about sociology, and they are using the media, and have used the media for decades now, to entertain people with issues that don't really matter. When you have the big news networks covering celebrity issues as if it's the most important thing, it becomes the most important thing. And this is not by accident. This is to keep us out of the way. Because if you're worried about the latest celebrity death or the latest celebrity couple or the celebrity breakup or your sports team having a shot at the Super Bowl or the World Series. There's so much information about those issues that can be discussed that will mesmerize people, and they won't know or care about the real issues that are out there.
Well, I think this is just one more piece of evidence of the degree to which the media, supposedly the watchdogs, has become the gatekeeper of the system.
Mainstream media are, first of all, nearly all of them corporations, nearly all of them now publicly held, part of the whole Wall Street financial system that they're supposed to report about objectively, but they can't. They, right now, in October of 2009, they are celebrating the recovery of the biggest banks in New York and saying that the recession is over. Of course, there are a few problems, like foreclosures are going on, unemployment is rising. All of this is affecting the American people, but it's not affecting the financial elite who also control the media.
Bernays successfully identified the invisible empire which controlled the minds of men. So as the populace is mesmerized and hypnotized by powerful behind-the-scenes forces, as they are distracted by the latest celebrity scandal, the newest cell phone, and their favorite sports team, this network disguises itself, remaining in the shadows.
And then a Gerson tape was obtained.
There are laws against healing cancer. The doctor is not allowed to try anything else. He must use only those treatments that have already proven to be failures. Imagine what we could do if this could be accepted. But there are laws against it. You're not allowed to heal. There's too much money to be made on drugs.
For Garrett's diabetic neighbor John, this message came too late to save his legs. But perhaps Bob the milkman had the best observation about the Gerson therapy.
What I'd like to see is some proof, some good scientific proof. Scientific proof.
The boy wasn't sure how that would be accomplished, but he did draw out an analogy between gold mining and human nature to start with. He decided the best place to start his research would be the public library. It didn't take much time before he located several independent sources that confirmed important points as outlined in Dr. Gerson's original classic book. From those important leads, the dubious characters that make up the history of the use of fluoride fascinated the boy. He dug for more information, and then more skeletons were uncovered. Then Garrett began to assemble a general outline of what needed to be accomplished to successfully confirm the Gerson protocol. It was when the words about hope were written that I made an inquiry to become involved in helping him document the integrity of the Gerson therapy.
First, there's Gerald Cox, who worked for the Mellon Institute of Industrial Research. The Mellon Institute, by the way, was the leading defender for the asbestos industry. Gerald Cox became interested in the fluoride from the suggestions of Francis Frary, the director of the aluminum laboratory of Alcoa. And then came a leading scientist in toxicology, Dr. Harold Hodge. Harold Hodge was the one who oversaw injecting plutonium and uranium in people.
Harold Hodge studied the questionable safety of fluoride, but under the combined pressures of the Atomic Commission and aluminum manufacturing, he had to say it was safe.
Harold Hodge, along with a group of scientists, helped develop the atom bomb.
Will represent 1 mile on your camera. The top part, 2 miles. We're going to switch to another camera. I'm going to move out of here. 3, 2, 1, 0. The shockwave will arrive in the control point area in approximately half a minute.
And then came Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, the wizard of public relations.
Selling fluoride for public water supplies was easy for Bernays. He used the slogan, "Trust your doctor." To this day, even fluoride tablets are dispensed to children, thanks in part for the need to use fluoride to build the atom bomb. Parallels can be drawn from this history to another in the making about cell phones. A $28 million grant was given to Dr. George Carlos in the 90s to prove cell phone safety, but instead he found otherwise. He refused to be paid off. Cell phone transmissions are still a concern as to how they affect insects.
Do they teach this in public schools?
But when it comes to dental health, diet, not fluoride, can play a huge role. This became vivid for Garrett as he assisted on minor surgery of his tame wolf. The perfect cavity-free teeth of the wolf pointed to facts in a book he had just finished studying from the library. It was called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by a distinguished dentist named Dr. Weston Price. Dr. Price traveled the world with his wife in the 1930s to visit native cultures that had never been exposed to modern civilization's diet of white flour, canned food, and sugar. To his amazement, these people averaged less than 1% of tooth decay. And Dr. Price noted something else. None of the people in these different tribes and cultures practiced any sort of dental hygiene. Not one of his subjects had ever used a toothbrush. But once processed food was introduced to them, tooth decay and disease followed, and it was the beginning of the end of the uniformly hardy and strong. Dr. Price studied animals with improper diets. Two-headed calves, deformed cats were the result. He also observed a direct link between human skull formation and diet. And yet, in present day, the subject of fluoride is still debated. In the state capital of Juneau, Alaska, I met up with the city's chief dental officer.
For the state of Alaska's position on water fluoridation, the Department of Health and Social Services and Division of Public Health support water fluoridation, but in Alaska it is a local initiative, and what's going on in Juneau is a local vote on Juneau resuming water fluoridation. So while the department supports this, this is really a local issue, and I'm also involved with the Citizens for Dental Health coalition, but that's not in my capacity as state dental officer.
Do you think that fluoride in the water will help prevent cavities and such? What is your position?
I think there's clear evidence over the past 60-some years now that fluoride reduces tooth decay.
But fluoride's only measurable effects on tooth decay are from topical application, not from drinking it. Hitler's alleged reason for mass medicating water with sodium fluoride was to sterilize humans and force them into submission.
From this video, you can see that the young chap is a little bit upset about what he's learning doing his homeschooling because of his inability to get to go to school. But with his education that he's learning about issues about the things that we have to eat, he's finding out that we are being deceived into the foods that we eat and the medicine that we take, that we are tricked into actually eating poisonous foods, and almost everything that we take, poisonous practices from corporations and laws that change the natural food into something that's not healthy for us. The injections of poisonous material like aluminum in our vaccines and all sorts of stuff. I'm going to show you more of this young lad and his journey in part 2 of this education illusion.